Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I am Mike Christensen, and we are talking about the lessons we can learn from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're talking about episode 13 of the Vox Machina campaign, Escape from the Underdark. The party has just slain a beholder, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the artifact they got from its body, the Horn of Orcus. They know that Lady Kima, the paladin they're traveling with who serves the Platinum Dragon Bahamut, wants to bring the horn to the surface, but they don't know why yet. They're trying to figure that out before they allow her to take it. Does she want to destroy it, or hide it, or use it? Lady Kima is still turned to stone, by the way. That happened during the Beholder fight. Tiberius ideally would like to partially unstone Lady Kima. Basically, he wants to communicate with her, but not have the risk that she might just take the horn and run. Unfortunately, it does not seem like that would be possible. Scanlan also challenges Tiberius on why he abandoned them for most of the fight, but Tiberius is all business, focused on what they're going to do next with the horn. And we get another moment where Tiberius casts the silence spell on somebody so that he can take the moment to explain his plan, instead of just explaining his plan when people ask him what he wants to do. Sorry, I try to keep the commentary fair and impartial during these episodes, but we have entered Act 2 of the Tiberius saga. So there are going to be times when I will point out that he probably could communicate better in these episodes because communication at the table is really important to me. Then the temple doors open, and a bunch of mind flayers and intellect devourers enter the room. And the Elder Brain is starting to glow with psychic energy as it begins to wake up and reconnect with the other mind flayers. The party watches with very nervous anticipation as Clarota psychically communicates with the other mind flayers. Then the mind flayers remove Clarota's metal cap and welcome him back into the hive.
At which point, Clarota kind of turns around at the rest of the group and looks at all of you and lowers his head a little bit as the mind flayers move in towards Clarota. One reaches over and pulls the cap from the back of his head.
Oh, fuck.
Removes it. At which point Clarota races up. And if you think you've ever seen an entity with tentacles for a mouth smile, the creases in his kind of awful, rubbery, fleshy face almost give a look of joy, of rediscovered connection.
And then half the party gets attacked with psychic stun blasts from the mind flayers. And it's initiative, so here are a few highlights. Keyleth, still in her earth elemental form, starts trying to knock down the doorway to block some mind flayers from being able to enter the temple from at least one of the doorways. Tiberius tries to borrow Scanlan's circlet because that would allow him to concentrate on more than one spell at a time. Specifically because he has telekinesis on the Horn of Orcus, and he doesn't want to let that go. He doesn't want anybody to touch the horn, and right now that is the simplest way to do that. But it would take an hour to attune to Scanlan's circlet in order to use it, so that's off the table. Scanlan and Pike are psychically stunned, and mind flayers are preparing to eat their brains. And Clarota is the one who's going to eat Scanlan's brain.
This horrible thought goes into your mind suddenly, a familiar voice saying,
"You've all done your work. Now it's time to feast."
Son of a bitch.
Turn on us.
Knew it.
I knew he was gonna do that.
What? None of us knew that.
I totally knew he was gonna do that.
Alright, that ends your turn. Keyleth, you're up.
I don't trust Clarota. I don't trust Clarota.
Every week.
Every week.
And then Percy blows Clarota's brains out.
Teeth are grinding into the back of your skull, and you feel this horrible pain as all of a sudden Clarota's mouth is beginning to find a way towards your skull. And then the tentacles suddenly go limp. As the back of Clarota's head
Traitor!
a mess.
Traitor! Kill Clarota!
Yes. Some people have no sense of fucking honor.
Traitor!
And Vex drops the mind flayer who is trying to chew on Pike's brain. Vox Machina really tries to kill the Elder Brain before they leave. Like, they drop a ton of damage into that thing. But it has too many hit points, and its defenses are gradually improving. This actually brings me to the lesson of today's episode. This is a fight that the members of Vox Machina cannot win, and I don't think that the party is under any delusions about that. There are plenty of other fights over the course of Critical Role, especially during the Vox Machina campaign where the party bites off more than they can chew, and then they have to run. Or even where Matt structures an adventure around the fact that they are going to face a foe that they cannot defeat and have to make a tactical retreat. But here, there is no uncertainty. The party needs to bail. And there are several ticking clocks at play in this episode. First, there is the endless swarm of mind flayers approaching the temple. Mechanically, there are never more mind flayers in the room than the party can keep track of. But from the moment the fight begins, the party knows that they are going to end up dealing with more mind flayers than they can handle. There are 2 doorways into the room and the recently shattered skylight, so it's not a question of if the bad guys can get into the room, but when and how many. The second ticking clock comes in the form of the creatures that actually enter the room, because they enter in waves and the danger continues to escalate. First we get mind flayers and intellect devourers, and then eventually the mind flayers that enter the room are accompanied by ogres. Again, the party already knows that they need to leave, but by presenting an in-universe escalation, Matt is illustrating the gravity of the situation. He's showing what's going to happen the longer they stay. The third ticking clock is the Elder Brain itself. Specifically, every turn the Elder Brain has in combat, Matt specifically describes the Elder Brain as waking up and gaining power. Shortly after Clarota dies, all of the other Mind Flayers' eyes illuminate at once, making it clear that although the Elder Brain does still have more power it can regain, it has reached a new threshold in its abilities in this fight. And the players rightfully identify this as being really bad for them if they aren't able to retreat in time. The final semi-accidental ticking clock of this episode is the fact that Scanlan and Pike fail their saves and are stunned by Mind Flayers. This leaves them incapacitated and defenseless for a good chunk of the fight. And the party has to fight the Mind Flayers and kill them before these Mind Flayers can eat the brains of Scanlan and Pike, and that is no easy feat. So there are 4 major indicators, 4 clear signs that the players cannot stay in the room. And all of them are totally grounded in the situation, in the environment, in the game world. They don't feel contrived or arbitrary the way ticking clocks so often can in D&D or just in fiction in general. Because once the players realize that the Illithids are not going to be on their side, there's no ambiguity. They gotta go, but that's easier said than done. And by describing all of these different ways in which the party is completely boned, Matt makes the situation much more dramatic than it might have been otherwise. For example, if we look back at episode 5 of this series, we can see another escape scene where Matt took a totally different approach. He didn't drop into initiative for that encounter, he used a completely different approach, a totally different technique, which I talked about a lot in that video, where he just described everything on the fly without the structure of initiative. It's hard to say conclusively one way or another why he had the party roll initiative in this situation and not in the previous one, but I do have a guess. Because once the party gets up to the top of the temple and starts to fly away toward the beach, Matt drops out of initiative. Because initiative is actually extremely poor at reconciling a situation where everybody is running in the same direction at the same time. That was the situation in episode 5 when the party was fleeing through the Duragar war camp. Trying to have a scene in initiative where everybody runs in the same direction gets really wacky because everybody moves asynchronously. If you were to watch it play out, you would see one person run forward and then stop once they'd reached the extent of their movement on their turn. And then someone else would move and then they would stop, and so on and so on and so on. Now, obviously, we know that's not what's playing out in the world of the game, but because of the structure of initiative, it's really difficult to not have that play out at the table when everyone is running together. So for something like the Duragar escape scene, it makes the situation needlessly complicated. It also creates odd moments where some players might be the subject of attacks from the enemy purely because they rolled low in initiative. Because they haven't had a chance to run away yet, they're closest to the enemies, and that doesn't really make any sense because everyone's running together, but again, when everyone's running together in initiative, they can't run all together. But for this scene, everybody is not running all together. They're all scattered throughout the temple and on top of the temple, and they have a few different ways to retreat, but they don't really have a plan. They're kind of just scrambling to get out. There's a rope, there's a flying carpet that can't fit everybody. Tiberius can cast fly on a couple of people, but no one of those solutions will work for everybody. So you can't just say you all run together because that's just not the situation they're in. And there are enemies in the room and more on the way, so what they do on their turns matters a lot. That's why going into initiative was invaluable for this scene to work. Now, back to the recap. As I said, the party reaches the roof of the temple and they fly off toward the beach, where we drop out of initiative.
We're out of here?
Need everybody to hop on the carpet.
Okay.
Dropping up?
No, I'm gonna turn into a huge pterodactyl and carry some folks.
Okay.
What?
You could do that?
Sure, why not?
Tiberius lands first and begins casting the teleportation circle spell. As the party lands on the beach, they run through the portal and they arrive in the city of Emon, the capital of the Empire of Taldore. safe and sound. They took the horn into the bag of holding, although they are still slightly worried about what it might do to the items that are in there, if it might corrupt them in some way. They pull out the few items that they are the most worried about, like the dragon's blood and the dragon's teeth and the basilisk eggs. They also realize that they are in a building in the city where the teleportation circles are housed. And the mages there are not thrilled that the party showed up without warning, so the party just has to excuse themselves and leave. Again, they debate turning Lady Kima back from stone to flesh in this moment, but they still are not sure how they want to handle the situation, how to get at her true intentions, so they decide to leave her as stone for now. And because they are just a little exhausted and they want to blow off some steam, they decide to do a pub crawl. And they're just gonna bring along Kima as a stone statue.
Let's put her in the bag. She's made of stone.
We won't tell her how much time has passed.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, I'll unstone her once we're
Made of
back.
stone. Stone doesn't breathe, right?
Be fine.
We don't know.
She's been
Rob wonders to himself.
Do not put her in the bag. Do not.
For the record, I think she'd be fine too. But we could bring her around and introduce her. It could be like Weekend at Bernie's.
Okay, great.
Yes! I put a fancy robe around Kima's stone statue.
This is so messed up.
All right.
Because sometimes players just need to blow off some steam after a big adventure. Back at the keep, Tiberius decides to go to bed, says let's just deal with this in the morning, but Scanlan turns him into a rat. This is an extension of their spell versus spell exchanges and a way for Scanlan to express his frustration with Tiberius. And despite my feelings about him throughout the other parts of this episode, this is actually one of my favorite Tiberius moments.
I can still cast as an animal, right?
Nope, you cannot talk.
Oh, I still get to bed.
They discuss the Horn of Orcus issue, specifically what they should do with it. Can they trust Lady Kima? Can they trust anybody with the knowledge that they have the horn? And they all agree they need to figure out what Lady Kima would do with the horn if she had it. But they need to do so in a way where they can control the flow of information. So a plan is formed. They are going to cure Lady Kima of being turned to stone, and then they are going to tell her they did not retrieve the horn and gauge her reaction.
We put the horn in the bag. We wake up Kima. We go, oh, we brought you back. Sorry we don't have the horn. If we did, what would you do with it? And then we decide what we do.
I like
plan.
half that plan.
I kind of like that plan.
I like
I
that
like
plan
it.
too.
I think we should tell her we didn't get it and see what she does.
So the next morning, they restore Lady Kima, and Grog is not in the room. He is in a different room of the keep with the bag of holding and the horn inside. So that way, technically, the party will not be lying when they say that they do not have the horn, even though they would be, but it's fine. You know, I think this is also just in case Kima goes ballistic and figures out they have the horn and tries to take it. The horn should not be in the room, is their thinking. Also, Tiberius teleports to his homeland of Draconia with no explanation. More on that in the next episode.
And
then-
funny story,
and
you
then
were
a-
right about Clarota. He was horrible. We killed him. We should have known all along. You were right. We should have trusted you. Sorry.
It's all right. It's all right.
When told that the party does not have the horn, Lady Kima tells them, lets them in on the fact that the horns of Orcus were hidden away ages ago, and the people who hid them away had the memories taken from them, so even they could not lead anybody back to the horns. When Lady Kima started having visions that the horn had been discovered, she knew her mission. She wants to bring the horn back to her organization, the Order of the Platinum Dragon, so that they can find a new hiding place for it. She also says the thing that pretty much seals the deal for the group. If there is a way to do more research and find a way to destroy the horn, she would prefer that. And they roll some insight checks, and that makes them feel better, so they do tell her that the horn is in a safe place. They agree to go talk to their friendly neighborhood wizard, Allura, who sent them on this mission, talk to her more about the horn, and figure out what the next steps should be. Oh, and they get a summons from the king to come to a meeting ASAP. But we'll pick up with all of that in the next session. Thank you for watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks with episode 14, Shopping and Shipping. For those who are watching these episodes along with us, the first half of the episode is a strategy meeting and a debriefing and prep for the next mission regarding the horn, and the second half is a shopping trip. If that sounds exciting to you, watch it. If it doesn't, skip it. But we're going to have a good time talking about something that Matt does in this episode. One of his true strokes of brilliance that will shape the entire direction of the campaign in a single moment. In the meantime, there are a few ways that you can support the channel. You can subscribe and ring the bell and get notified about these videos as soon as they come out, which is every Monday and Thursday. Doing that sends a message to YouTube that people enjoy this channel. The earlier you watch a video in its life cycle, the more it promotes the video and shares it with other people, which really helps this channel out. You can also join my Patreon. If you join at $3 a month, you get access to special D&D content that I make for the patrons and to live streams that I do with the patrons as well. $5 a month gets you early access to videos and some special videos that I make only for the patrons. The third way you can support the channel is by joining my Discord. There is a really cool community of people talking about D&D and RPGs and actual play and putting together games. It's really, really cool. The fourth way you can support the channel is by signing up for my newsletter and getting notified when I have cool updates. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, play fair and have fun. But for this scene, I hate living here. I haven't talked about this in a video before, but I do hate living here. But I won't have to soon. Haha, I got a house.